Hello, I'm Hope Katz-Gibbs, creator of the Incandescent Radio Network, here with my friend and colleague, Tony Farmer, host of the Black Lives Matter radio show. We are thrilled you are here with us today, so let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Black Lives Matter radio show. I'm Hope Katz-Gibbs, the founder of Incandescent Radio and Incandescent Incorporated. I am thrilled to be here with Tony Farmer, the host of the show, and our guest tonight, Kimberly Lee Minor. Just so you have a little backstory, Kim and I went to high school together, and probably middle school too, in suburban Philadelphia in Lafayette Hill. Plymouth Whitemarsh High School was our school, and we inspired each other, I do believe, throughout all of that. Kim was the president of the student council. I was the president of the class. And since then, we have moved on to create just amazing organizations together, if I do say so myself. Kim has held positions as a brand president for London Fog, Rampage, Bongo, and Joe Boxer. And most recently was senior VP of strategy, merchandising, and operations at Bath and Body Works. Amazing, right? Today, she is leveraging her personal insights and hard-won expertise to help women and people of color accelerate their careers by providing them inclusive communities where they can obtain exposure, support, and empowerment from accomplished experts. Like, wow, doesn't get better than that. So I'm going to throw it to Tony Farmer, the host of Incandescent Radio's Black Lives Matter radio show, and I'm excited to hear what the two of you talk about.
Thank you, Hope, and thank you, Kimberly, for joining us this evening. I'm so excited to talk to you about a myriad of things, and I want you to feel comfortable just kind of sharing with us your experience. I'm going to throw a few questions at you, but I really want you to think of this more of a conversation. And just kind of get us started. So you're a native Pennsylvania.
Absolutely. Philadelphia, we got it done.
Well, so thank you for the transition. Thank you for the transition. You obviously knew where I was going with my next question. So Pennsylvania, right, was responsible for electing not only the next vice president, but the very first African-American female in an office at the highest level. Tell me how that impacts you personally and what your thoughts were after the election was called.
Well, just to go back a little bit, you know, when Barack became president, right? I remember that day I was in my office, my kids were asleep, my husband was next door at the party, right? And I was just so overwhelmed with emotion because I just never thought that I'd see that, right? And the experience was so amazing because it started when he announced. And my boys were very little, I think like 4 and not quite 2. And he announced on a very cold day in January. I remember it, like I'll never forget. And then when I came home, because I was running errands, it was a Saturday. When I came home, my older son, who was 4, ran to me and he said, Mom, a man who looks like me and kind of sounds like Martin Luther King just announced that he is going to run, he's running for president. And that, you know, it gave me chills because my son actually did look like Barack, right? So that was a whole nother conversation. Fast forward, and I talk about this, I said, you know, it felt to me the last 4 years, it felt like we had been at, when Barack and Michelle were in the White House, we felt like that, I felt like that's what Reconstruction must have felt like. Right? After the slaves were free and they saw they could have power and they could be a part of the government. And it felt just empowering. And then it changed. I believe it changed because when that power looked like me, it scared people in America. And so they went the opposite direction. We went into a Jim Crow of sorts. So I thought, well, Jim Crow lasted over 100 years. Oh my God, is this what it's about? Because I have young men I have to raise, you know, like all that went into the last 4 years. So I worked very hard to make sure that we were going to have something different in the White House. And I was hurt on Tuesday night. I was really hurt because it was so tight. I couldn't believe that Americans would not come out and do the moral thing. Like, you know, to me, there were two elections, a moral election and the political election. And I was very hurt by the moral election. And I was hurt because I looked in my son's face and he was hurt. And my older one is freshman in college. And so I talked to him and I could hear it in his voice. And it was almost like the same thing, the same sound I heard when Trump won. So watching it very closely. And when Wolf Blitzer announced that it was official, I've never exhaled so deeply in my life, right? I was like, thank you, Jesus. We finally have not only like, Joe, I just, he's committed his life to it. And my husband knew Bo, and I know that Joe is a good guy, but we got out of our way and we had someone who is just so prepared, so intelligent, so powerful, and such a role model. So our young men had a role model in Barack, and now our young women have a role model in Kamala. And, you know, she stood there. That I had done this collage a few months ago because I just felt like it's going to happen. I had done a collage of pantsuits because I was like, let me tell you, ladies, it's time to get the right pantsuit. And of course, there's a lot of discussion, right? Because like Hillary wore pantsuits. I'm like, not the same thing. These are fly pantsuits because she's a fly person, right? And fly in so many different ways. She's educated, and her energy, she's so confident and just comfortable being herself. And that's what we need to see, right? Because she is of the people. So, you know, long way of saying yesterday was an amazing, amazing day. It just made me so happy. And I also saw some things where, you know, of course she's an AKA, and all my family are AKAs, and I am not. I am a Delta.
Oh my gosh, sacrilege!
A whole nother
sacrilege.
Yeah.
Oh girl, how'd you survive that?
It wasn't easy. But Hope knows I have to do it my way. Like it has to be for me. I have never been a person worried about peer pressure. It's just everything has to be for me. Right. But you know, we all came together and we supported her, and oh my goodness, so proud. I can't wait until the Greek inaugural balls. I mean, we're gonna have DC is going to be a party in January.
You know, you bring something up. You know, one of the things that I spend a lot of time doing is trying to bridge the gap of understanding between cultures, right? Yes. And it's really difficult to understand if you're not part of the community and you're not part of that culture, what the Divine Nine means, right? How they connect, while keeping some competition in there and some pride about which one you represent. Yeah. For people who will listen to this and not quite understand what the Divine Nine is all about, I would appreciate it if you could just give a little perspective from your station.
Oh, absolutely. So back in the early 1900s, when certain classes of African Americans were able to go to college, and oftentimes it was after the war or they were adults, to have that camaraderie and protection and kinship on campuses, there were Greek organizations. However, we weren't invited into those organizations. And so we developed our own. And much like many other organizations in our community, those organizations were considered the cream of the crop, right? Like these were the people who were excelling in school, had something to talk about, and they all had a different point of view. So I'll talk about the sororities. Founded at Howard University, which is like probably the #1 HBCU, AKA Alpha Kappa Alpha, was founded in 1911, I believe. And those women were considered progressive, right? They were, but they were of society. When there were other social issues that needed our attention, right? We're being educated. That's the focus. We need to make a difference for our communities. And so they split, and the young women who wanted to focus on social concerns became Delta Sigma Theta, and those who wanted to be social stayed Alpha Kappa Alpha.
You're gonna get yourself in all kinds of trouble.
Nobody would be surprised if they heard me say this. So, now, and Alpha Kappa Alpha, I'm not going to throw shade. They are a large organization and they give back to the community just like others. But in addition to those organizations, then the Alpha Phi Alpha was the men's organization they were the brothers to the Alpha Kappa Alpha. And then you've got, and they are known as the erudite group, the original. Then you've got Kappa Alpha Psi, and they are, Colin Kaepernick is a Kappa. And so they're very involved in the community, but they were known as the pretty boys, right? And so they're all about gentlemanly. They are very focused on men being gentlemen. And then there were the Qs, and the Qs were our brother. Are you a Q?
I am not.
Okay. So the Omega Psi Phi, which are called the Qs, they were.
But if I give that vibe, I'm okay with it.
Okay. Well, they are the brothers to Delta Sigma Theta, which is my organization. And then we had Phi Beta Sigma, they were the brothers to Zeta Phi Beta, and you've got Sigma Gamma Rho. And those are the general Divine Nine. And so when you come through, and they grew from HBCUs to PWIs, and I think they're especially important on those campuses because as someone who has been in the PWI educational system my whole life, like being on, a campus where you're still the minority, having that sisterhood and that larger group of, kindred spirits, for the most part, they're there for education and to make a difference in their community. And they do it in different ways. And so the difference between the Divine Nine organizations and most other Greek organizations is that once you become a member, because it's not easy to become a member. So once you become a member of the Divine Nine, you are a member for the rest of your life. So it's not just while you're on campus. It continues, and you give back to your community. And we come together quite often so that we can have even more impact. And so that's what we did for Kamala.
Right.
We set up funds. Yeah, we set up funds, and you pledged, and you paid weekly, right? Because we want, based on how long you've been in your organization. I mean, there were so many fun just drives based on, where you pledged and all those things. So, it's something to be very proud of, are very proud of.
Yeah, I would say that a lot of people just don't understand, for the sake of arguments, if you live in this space the way I do, you have the PWIs, the predominantly white institutions, you have the HBCUs. In fact, I was running a seminar last February, and there was a person in the audience who had never heard the term HBCU, and if so, didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
So historically Black colleges, universities, predominantly white institutions, and a new one that my daughter taught me. She goes to ODU down in Norfolk. Mm-hmm. It was MSUs, minority serving institutions.
Oh,
so that kind of,
okay.
I know, right? And so that kind of broadens it. Tell me, and I won't stay on the Greek thing too long, but it is so important for people who don't understand the culture, what drives African Americans in this country. And I'm definitely going to get on your background, but tell us how important that connection to the Divine Nine has been in your personal career, your personal walk.
Well, yeah. So, I come from a family, my mother's family is from South Carolina. And my mother's mother is, they would call her mulatto. right?
Yeah.
And so she grew up, her mother was a school teacher, educated, and her father owned a lot of land and sent his children to school. And so my great aunt, my grandmother's sister, oldest sister, she got her master's in 1920, and she was a member of Zeta Phi Beta. And so education and the Divine Nine, all of that was just around me as I was growing up. My father's family is from West Virginia, and his first cousins were involved in organizations, and actually they're Deltas, which caused, that caused the friction. But as an only child, right, I had no siblings. And what I would see from my older cousins and even my aunt, like when I would go down south to visit with her, because she was the headmaster of a private school. And when I was 4 going 5, because I stayed with my grandmother, my mom and dad worked, so I stayed with my grandmother a lot. I went down there for a year, and she put me in first grade in the private school.
Wow.
And she was like, yeah, you don't tell me you're, and I was like, I'm 4, right? She's like, I don't care, you can do it, and you're going to do it. And, and while I was there, I got to meet all of her friends, and they were Deltas, and they were, and those women stayed with me, right? So when I graduated from high school, they had started funds for me. I went to school on scholarships, but they had started funds, and I didn't even know that, but these women had come together, and this is what they did. And so when I was on campus, this is a true story, I really thought, oh, I'm going to be an Alpha, I'm going to be AK. I know I'm going to be AK, but I was on campus. I remember there was a lot of talk from the AKs about what I looked like, right? Because I had long hair, like remember, I used to have very long hair.
I'm tracking.
And they talked a lot like, oh, well, you should be in our group because you're so cute. And I was like, what? Wow. No, I didn't have anything to do with that. I don't have anything to do. I want to be over here. And then I saw these 2 AKs get into a fight. And I was like, aren't they supposed to be sisters? Why are they fighting? And I said, yeah, I don't think their priorities are right. And so I went to, when I met the Deltas on campus, and I liked what they were doing. They talked about being in the community, in West Philadelphia and North Philadelphia, and making a difference. And like, I didn't grow up needing anything, but I felt like I had such a blessed life. I wanted to be with people who did that. And having that connection, I've moved a lot for my career. And I'm a single person. I moved, and I remember my first time moving away from home. I moved to Atlanta after grad school, and by myself. I'm in an apartment, and I'm moving in, and this woman says, "Are you a Delta?" And I said, "Why do you say that?" She said, "Because I see your elephants." And I said, "I am." And she said, "So am I, so we're gonna be friends." And she lived upstairs. And so it's given me that sisterhood that I didn't have growing up. And no matter where you are, you don't have to know anyone in town, but you call, you say, "Oh, I'm a Delta," you put it out online, and you instantly have family. And so that support, when you know that you've got somebody who has your back, it gives you the energy and the confidence to really be who you can possibly be, the best you can possibly be. If you have the confidence that there's someone who's going to catch you when you fall, because you're going to make mistakes, but when you have those people around you, you can do so much more. And they're always very supportive.
You are doing a great job of helping me transition between the topics that I wanted to talk to you about. I read a little bit about your background, and there's a lot of elements of it that sounds so familiar. Being the only one in the boardroom, being the only one in the training room, being the only one, who was doing some of the projects you were doing, having the experience of having somebody who may be a little older, been there, done that, who looks like you, but doesn't want to be a pioneer in that way. And then here you come, right? And you are brimming with talent, energy, innovative thought process. if you were to give us 2, 3 things, mantras that you kept close to your heart, mind, and spirit to help you kind of get through those situations, what would they be?
Well, I always just hear my mom and dad in my voices in my head, like they always told me that no matter how well you do, you have to do twice as well, right? Like twice as good. Like if you get all A's, then you need to do extra credit, right? Because you need to get used to that and develop that muscle. Because as you go out in the world as a professional, whatever your chosen profession is, in order for you to show up and to just get in the door, you're going to have to be twice as good. And to get a seat at the table, you're probably going to have to add a little extra sauce on top of that. And so I grew up knowing that, right? It wasn't a shock when I got into corporate, because my mom, they had experienced it before me, right? And so even when I was saying, oh no, things have changed, they're still in my head. And so knowing that, I kind of showed up knowing what I had to do. And, much like Kamala, I've always believed, oh, okay, I get it. I'm going to be the first. Look, when Hope and I were in class, I was the only Black person in our class. Right? It was always the case. I was the only Black kid in AP and talented and gifted. We were the first Black family to move in my neighborhood. Okay, right? So you don't use that as a crutch. You figure it out, right? And so if you know that that's what it's going to look like when you're walking into these places, you know how to show up. And so I would say that was the first thing, that I wasn't shocked by it, and it wasn't new to me. But I didn't want it to be always, like, I didn't want to be, even though I knew it was the first, much like Kamala, I didn't want to be the last.
Got you.
Right. And so when I was there, I also knew, okay, when you're here, not only do you have to do more, but you have to do it better. Because the minute you make a slight mistake, that's going to close the door on anyone else that looks like you, because they're going to say, we tried it and it didn't work. And so there have been situations where I hated it. Like it hated it so much it made me sick, physically ill. But I persevered so that I could have a positive product to show, so that I could bring other people in, and then I could move on, right? But I wouldn't have left without changing something, or leaving some sort of mark, so that the next person that comes in has an easier time. So I think that those nuggets, and just a whole lot of, like, I will say my mom and dad were, they were tough. They had really high expectations, but those expectations really created, I would say, a very prolific toolbox for me to be prepared for whatever came my way. And they weren't perfect, but when it came to me, they did a pretty damn good job, and gave me a lot of experience to be a parent when the time came.
So, Kimberly, I have 2 daughters. I have a 19-year-old in college, as I mentioned, ODU. Very proud of her. And I have a high schooler who is 15, going on 30, who is here at home. One day in the near future, they call you and they say, "Hey, Miss Kimberly, I'm heading my first staff meeting at this large company. What advice can I get from you?" What do you tell my daughters when they walk into that situation?
Okay, so I'm going to tell them to don't drink coffee, drink tea, because you're going to be nervous. And if you drink coffee, it's going to give you the jitters and dry mouth. And so the things that you should be saying, you might lose them because you're going to be nervous, and the caffeine is going to make you jittery. That's just a little side. I tell them to get to the room 10, 15 minutes early. Walk it, get a feel for the room, because you're going to be owning it. So you need to know where you are, so that when you need to walk off, you're getting those nervous feelings, but you know the room. then you can use the room as a prop to make you the star, right? Okay. And then the other thing, the last thing I think that's most important is really just know your shit, right? Like just read it, know it, right? So if there are any questions, know more than you need to know. And then just put on a fabulous smile because you know more than they do. And just make sure that when you are telling them and presenting to them, that you know more than they do. And just do it over again, like rinse and repeat. And the more you do it, the more you can do it.
Well, don't be surprised if you get a call from Jordan and Naya Farmer in the near future.
That's fine. I have so many mentees and I love it. I really do. I love it. I'm in a program at OSU. I have mentees. And you know, it's so funny. I was talking to a colleague. I guess we haven't worked together, but I know her professionally. And my mentee, we were talking about her internships. And she was telling me where she had applied. And I said, you haven't heard from these people? She's like, no. I said, well, who? And so she told me. So I said, oh, I know that person. So then I text them. I was like, you know, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah. And they said, oh, well, I'm so glad you reached out to me because we're looking for diverse candidates for the internship. And I said, oh, okay. Well, let me see what I can do and find you some diverse candidates. And so she said, well, what do you mean? You reached out about your mentee. I said, my mentee is blonde with blue eyes. What are you talking about? Right. So she said, oh, I said, well, yeah. I said, I have mentees over here, but I wasn't calling you about them. I said, I have mentees of all colors, all shapes, all sizes. Just because I'm a woman of color doesn't mean all my mentees are. That's a bigger world. And so she was like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have assumed that. I said, no, you shouldn't have. And don't do that again.
You don't mind setting the record straight, huh?
Yeah, no. It's a big world. It's 2020. Come on.
Yeah, wake up, huh?
Yeah.
So I don't mind sharing with you that I coach quite a few women. I would say the bulk of my business is coaching women. Can you tell me a little bit about how you would help a young lady, a young woman in the professional workplace maneuver other women, right? Because in my experience, the hardest on women are other women. And it's of course a dynamic that I cannot touch mentally, but just, you know, from your experience, tell me how you would guide those mentees.
Yeah, that's tough because, man, wow. I mean, you're just bringing back these visuals of some situations that I've had with women. And that just makes me, that makes me sad, right? I believe women support women, like period, right? Yeah. But a lot don't. And I think it depends on the generations. I believe that the younger generation is much better at it, right? So Gen Z, they go through middle school and they're just mean. And then once they get a little older, they start to realize, oh, this is my sister. They have very deep relationships in millennials. But I think that when you look at the older Gen X and boomers, you know, especially boomers, they almost had to look like a man and play like a man. So there's a harshness to them that they've had to put that humanity, the human side, away to be successful in corporate world. So you kind of have to understand that and always show up prepared, right? And make it about the work and not about the personal. Because I've told people who work for me that a lot. Like when you're not at work, you can be as friendly and as fun as you want to be. And I want you to have a great time when you're at work. And I'm good, but you can't apply what your bubbliness to everybody, right? Like show up as a professional. Make sure that it's about the work. Just navigate that. Don't try to be girlfriends at work, like, and I because where I see what happens is, unless somebody's just a bee, when in navigating, they try to make it personal, right? So if someone says something about the work they've done, then it's seen as they don't like me.
Okay.
Right. Well, it's unless it's a bad person, it's not about that, because I've been around a lot of men. When I work with men, or I actually enjoy it more, because that's what it is. We show up and it's about the work. Right. And if there's something that needs to be improved, we talk about the work. It's not a personal affront. And women tend to blur that line.
Gotcha.
Right. And so I would really say, make it about the work. Just stay focused on the work. And if you go and want to have a personal relationship, invite them out for a happy hour or something. Do it outside. But once you come in, just focus on the work. And then there's not much they could say.
Right.
Unless there's somebody that's just crazy. And I've encountered that,
That's your professional term for it, at least, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. There are some crazy people out there. There are crazy, but karma is and as long as, if you keep your reputation intact, then no one can take that away from you. I mean, I had a really crazy situation, and I learned what I'm saying now from real experience. This person who I worked for, I mean, she literally was nuts. It was when my mom was dying, and I had come home to be with her, because it was like her last week. Like they said, she's got a week. And knowing that I was there for that purpose, this woman called my parents' house and asked me about something that I had left with my assistant to take care of. So I said, well, she has the information. Why are you calling me? She's like, I don't care. You need to call Korea. And I said, I'm not calling Korea. I'm not calling Korea from my parents' house. I'm not. So she was like, well, you need to call Korea. And if you tell anybody that I called you and said to do it, I'm going to say it didn't happen. So I said, okay, great.
Wow.
Whatever. I'm not calling. So then that was just like one example of her craziness. And then time went by, like my mom passed away, then my aunt passed like 2 months later, my grandmother. And I was on a trip with her, and I had literally buried my grandmother and got on a flight to Korea. And when we got there, now at this point, I am running a $350 million business.
Mm-hmm.
I have an admin. This woman, I reported to her, she had an admin. We go to check into the hotel, and there's something wrong with her reservation. I've already checked in. I'm walking to the elevator, and she starts screaming my name in the lobby. And she's like, what did you do to and she's cussing, what did you do to my, I was like, what? And so it was just like, people like that exist. And I let it get to me because I was at a weak state, right? My mom had died. My father had a brain tumor. I was responsible for my grandparents. And so it just like kind of got in under my skin. And I guess that was a breakdown, right? Because I started to stutter. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, because I let her get in. But after that experience with her, and it went on a little longer, but after that experience with her, I learned so many lessons about myself, because I was like, okay, that will never happen again. Right. Because when the first sign of crazy, I'm going to talk to someone about that, and I'm going to be very clear on what they did and what my boundaries are. Yeah. And so, that's just, there are some of those people out there, unfortunately, and you have to learn how to navigate.
My goodness. Tell me about Bumbershoot.
Okay. So Bumbershoot is it's my creation. It is this wonderful magic umbrella, and under this umbrella, I create communities and content. And I partner with leaders predominantly in fashion and retail, but other industries as well, to help them transform their culture and their processes so that I am not the first, no, nor is anyone else the first and only. They have inclusive communities and they have training on what to do with their existing communities so that it is welcoming and women and people of color can grow professionally and personally in those organizations. And so it is probably the most fulfilling work I have done to date. And I'm not an HR person. I'm not trained in D&I, but I am a person of color who has spent my whole career in different corporate environments. And so the advantage that I have is that I've spent my life telling stories. So I've told stories with product. I've brought people together around those products. And so that's what I do with the communities. And when I talk to a CEO about their business and I ask them, tell me why you got, when I look at, your hourly employees, 65% of them are diverse. And when I look at your leadership, you've got 0 or 2% or 4%. Let's talk about that. Why is it like that in 2020 or in 2019 or whenever? Why is it like that? And most times they just, I don't know. I never really thought about it. Never really thought about it. Okay. So then let's work together. And it's really been amazing. I have one client who I thought was going to be the most difficult. They had been around for almost 50 years. And in that time, had only hired one person of color.
50 years, one.
Yes.
1 in 50.
1 in 50. And so I thought, oh my gosh. But I have to tell you, it started out slow because they didn't know what they didn't know. They are so open now to learning and moving forward, and just every, there's always an opportunity, and I'm in there every other week and talking to the CEO one-on-one, like coaching his leadership team. And they hired someone else who I said, okay, well, you did it a little fast because I didn't think you were ready, but we're going to have to do a little extra work. But to see people putting in the work and asking those important questions and wanting to have conversations in some very conservative environments, it's fulfilling because we're making a difference. And in the communities, I'm really proud of the communities. Most of them are for women thus far, although I do get at least 2 or 3 requests a week from men asking me to either let them into the groups or build a group for them. Right. And the professional organization that I started is a WALK in retail. It's called Women of Color in Retail. And that's new. So we've been around now for 2 months, and that's been really cool. I tried to do that 10 years ago and got 6 people at B. Smith's for dinner. And I said, well, where's everybody else? And they were like, no, it's us, just us.
Wow. B. Smith's. Now you're bringing memories back for me, but please continue.
Yeah.
Love B. Smith's.
Yeah. At the time I was vice president, and I said, there has to be someone who looks like this is ridiculous. Like we're out there somewhere. So I reached out to people I knew. And they said, we'll reach out to people we know. And when we got together, there were 6 of us. So I said, this doesn't make sense. It's 2020. There has to be more than 6 people. And if you know of anybody, please just tag them. And I did this on LinkedIn because I said, we need to create something where there's a talent pool, because I'm so sick of hearing these companies say the reason they don't have leadership of colors because the talent doesn't exist. I know it's out there. It has to be out there. And so I just posted on a Sunday night on LinkedIn and had 10,000 views. And just 10,000 views in like 3 days. And people were posting, tagging people. You need to know about this. You need to know about this. And so we had a gathering, and we had 100, because on my Zoom, I can only hold 100. So we had 100 and we had people asking to, for the next time we get together. Yeah. But I said, well, let's just do this. I'm going to do prompts, and then you get together. And once you're finished that prompt, we'll come back to the larger group, and let's do that a few times. And so we did that with different things. Like it was, the first one was easy. Like, what's your favorite piece of fashion? And but then the last one was never have I ever. And so there were 10 groups of 10, and they came back and they said, the number one answer was, never have I ever looked to my right or my left in a business meeting and seen someone who looked like me.
Wow.
That 7 out of 10.
Wow.
Okay, I got it. Never have I ever been in a room, a Zoom, or anywhere else and seen this many beautiful women of color in one place. And then the third was, never have I ever felt so much hope and optimism that I'm in the right place. And that just really hit me, and I said, wow. And since then, people I wouldn't have expected to know anything about this group have told me about this group. Like, I was talking to the CEO of Bombas, the sock company, the other day, and I forget how we got on the conversation, but we were talking, and I said, well, I think we were talking about how he could bring more people of color into the leadership, because they're not hourly, but they're junior level.
Yeah.
And I said, well, we have some amazing women of color in my organization. And he said, what's your organization? And I said, Women of Color Walk in Retail. And he said, that's you? I said, yeah, that's me. And I said, well, how do you know about it? And he said, well, we interviewed someone who told us that that's how they heard that we were, and I said, oh, that's great. And then someone else reached out and said, oh, do you know anything about this organization, Walk in Retail? I said, yeah, what do you want to know? And they were like, well, are you a member? I said, yeah, I guess I am.
Yeah.
It's my organization.
I founded it. Yeah.
I founded it, so I guess I am a member. And they were just like, wow. And so I just built the advisory board, and we've got some heavy hitters on there. I'm really proud of that. We have Les Flexner's previous chief of staff. We have Macy's CFO, who was a woman of color. We have head of HR for GE, and the woman who created the curriculum, she's still doing it for ELC. So yeah, I'm excited about that. I'm excited about all the work that we're doing. And I'm just loving it. It's so different than what I was doing in certain ways, and so much of what I was doing on the other side of it, right? It's still about the story. How do you provide a platform for people to continue to tell their story authentically through the work that they do, right? And to get recognized by the work that they do, and to make sure that, people talk about diversity and inclusion, and I don't like the whole diversity and inclusion, because I feel like diversity is a given, right? It's barring the door to inclusion that's the problem.
That's the challenge, right? Yes.
That's the challenge. And so the way I look at it, diversity is a given. I don't know what we're talking about, but let's talk about inclusion and equity. Let's talk about that, because that's where the work really needs to be.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Well, I am consider me one of your fans. I am beyond honored to have connected with you. I will tell you something you already know. You are a role model. And God bless you for standing up. I know that sometimes it's hard to carry that mantle on your shoulder. I believe me, I get it. Being a leader and a person of color is something that a lot of people just don't get. And being an entrepreneur, having that DNA, that brain cell that not a whole lot of people have, that makes you want to take risks and makes you want to jump on faith. I understand that completely. So I am going to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I pray that we will have a chance to connect again really, really soon. As always with the Black Lives Matter radio show, I leave the last question to Hope, and any topic that she wants to offer up for our interviewee. So Hope, over to you.
Thank you, Tony. You did a beautiful job as always. Kim, it's so great to see your beautiful face. It's been so long. You've always been this person. This has been you since we were like 16 or younger even.
Younger, right? I think we met, we were 12. Can you believe that? We've known each other since we were 12.
12.
Wow. And I've always just had so much respect for you and appreciated, that you were the only Black woman in the class. And, but I don't see it that way. I see it more like, who are you inside? And so it's an honor to, be able to reach out to you during this time. And I find it just remarkable that this has given us an opening to talk, in this arena, and that Tony is my strategic partner here in DC, and that you're doing what you're doing. So please, I don't have a question as much as it is an opportunity. Tell us how we can help you.
Well, I think that this is going to be amazing, because when you put it out there and you talk about walk in retail and Bumbershoot and how we can partner, these are the opportunities. Like Tony, you work with women. I'm all about supporting women. So you can help them, helping me by introducing them, how can we help them? Let's work together. Like, those are the things that are important to me. How can we make a difference together? So as long as we stay connected and we're making a difference, you have done something very big for me, and I appreciate it.
Well, I would say that look for big things.
I love it. That's awesome. That is awesome.
Well, now we have an opportunity, Tony and I were on bated breath with this election, because, now we have an opportunity with this new administration I have faith in the future. Like, I feared for that, and I'll say that publicly at any time, So, yeah. What can't we do, right?
That's what I feel.
Right.
I feel like the way, you saw The Wiz, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when they throw water on Eveline,
yes,
and workers come out of their skin.
Yes.
That's what I felt Saturday morning. And it was a brand new day.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, thank you again. God bless Pennsylvanians.
Yes.
And
Montgomery County.
And we will be in touch soon. Thank you again for being a guest on Black Lives Matters radio show. And I pray that we talk soon.
Absolutely. Take care.
Thank you.
Roger that.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So that's all for today's episode of the Black Lives Matter radio show on incandescentradio.com. We have an amazing lineup of future guests, just like you heard on today's show. So be sure to tune in for another episode and tell your friends about us so they can listen too. If you or someone you know should be a guest on our show, send me an email, hopekatzgibbs@gmail.com, and we'll be in touch. Again, this is blacklivesmatterradioshow.com on the Incandescent Radio Network. We look forward to talking to you. Until then, stay safe and be well.